Thank you, Paul. My personal interest goes in the Liberty goes back a ways because I was in college and I learned about the Liberty and then the Pueblo. Later on, I found myself in the same situation that Paul Finley was because I had a draft notice coming up, and I decided to enlist in the Navy, and they assigned me to the Naval Security Group. And people like myself and Terry Phillips here in the crowd ended up being CTs, although I think he had a lot more experience with deploying platforms than I ever did. I never even saw a ship. But we have two survivors of the Liberty. They're here today. We had an earlier event in Iowa City. We had another survivor here at that point. But I'd like to introduce Bryce Lockwood, a retired gunnery sergeant. He's part of the Marine detachment on the Liberty. And I'd like him to come up and say a few words.
Israel claims this dastardly attack was a case of mistaken identity. Well, there are a few problems with that. Number one, the ship that they claim they mistook us for was an Arab ship, the El Qasir, which was a World War I horse carrier, and her only armament was a 4-pound muzzle-loading cannon. The second argument I would offer for that, Arabic ships were painted black with Arabic script identifications amidships. That's in the middle of the ship. All United States Navy ships are painted gray. Can you tell the difference between black and gray? And we had very clear markings, AGTR-5 on the bow of the ship in 8-foot high letters. GTR stands for General Technical Research, 5th ship of her class, the most modern of her class, and that means she was a non-combatant ship. The Israelis claimed they couldn't see any flag. Well, they shot down 2, and we ran up 3, and the third one was the biggest flag we had on board ship. They claimed there was a lot of smoke, and they couldn't see the flag. Well, there wasn't any smoke until they attacked us. Lyndon Johnson said he did not want to embarrass his allies. How did Lyndon Johnson know who was attacking us? The Israelis were using unmarked aircraft, and those of us who were the recipients of their fire did not know who was attacking us. Had they been firing at the El Qasir, the torpedoes they fired at it would have totally missed because of the difference in draft of the two ships. The El Qasir was considerably smaller and had, not left port for over 20 years and was waiting to be cut up for scrap. She was totally unseaworthy, so that argument doesn't hold water. There were 821 large caliber strikes on the Liberty. We're talking about 40 millimeter, this size, larger, and when they struck, they splattered red hot iron all over everything. There were 3,100 large caliber machine gun strikes on the Liberty. We were literally riddled. I think one of the reasons they called off the attack is they ran out of ammunition. They fired 5 torpedoes at us. Luckily for us, the Israeli Navy was not as competent as the Israeli Air Force was. I had a reporter, we were guests of Paul Finley. My wife and I were guests of Paul Finley in July of last year. While we were there, my cell phone rang, and it was a reporter from Israel Television wanting to do an interview for their local television in Israel. We set up an appointment, and we worked for a couple of hours to get my Marine Corps mind geared to the modern-day musings of scope. But we finally got her done, and the appointed time came and went. And a half an hour later, my phone finally rang, and it was this reporter from Israel Television stating that they had technical difficulties and they have to get back to us, and he never called back. I could go on, but I have some copies of This article, New Revelations, An Attack on American Spy Ship. This article appeared on the front page of the Chicago Tribune 5 years ago. The author, John Crutzen, was a Pulitzer awardee for journalism. Shortly after the article appeared, the parent company, the Chicago Tribune, changed hands. A gentleman bought it who had ties to Israel, and one of the first things he did was to fire John Crutzen for the article. Now John Crutzen doesn't even want to talk about it. We have several copies of that article, and you're welcome to that. Mike, next.
I'd like to thank you. My name is Mike Shaley. I'm from Clinton, an Iowa native, and we appreciate this proclamation that Cedar Rapids presented us with, and we'll display it proudly. I would just like to thank you for coming to this gathering today. It's always a pleasure to see people that are concerned about the country's welfare and what's going on with it. It'd be a lot better if we had 10 times as many people, but it's hard to get people together these days. But I got to agree with everything that Bryce said about the attack on Liberty. It was, in our opinion, very deliberate. They tried to put it off as a mistake. Well, if it was a mistake, it was the best planned mistake that we'd ever seen. I mean, they didn't miss a beat. They knew what targets they were firing at. They took out our communications right off the bat, so we couldn't get any messages out for assistance. And that's when Hal Bartier stretched that line and got one off on a real obscure channel. And if it hadn't been for that, we'd have probably all been into a drink and been shot out of the water completely. But it's a shame that it takes so long for a government to admit they had a part in something like this. I mean, and they're still reluctant to admit that they were a part of the plan. You know, we think it was between Israel and the United States. This was all set up prior to it, and we were just going to be sacrificial lambs. And then it would have drawn us into a full-scale war, World War III, with Egypt and the other Syrian nations. It's sad, but it's part of the way our government seems to want to work. And if it hadn't been for a few good congressmen like Paul Finley and a couple others, they've really tried to help us get this inquiry and congressional investigation formed, but every time we get someone that's active in it and they present it to Congress, it gets sidetracked and put on the back burner, and it seems like their political career dwindles rapidly. So obviously there's an awful lot of Israeli or Jewish input in our own Congress, and we need to take our Congress back. And we really got to, when we go to the polls, we really got to decide who we want to support and why, and make sure that when they talk the talk, they got to be able to walk the walk as well. So we keep plugging away with our congressmen and senators and stuff like that, and we encourage everyone to do the same. So if you have any questions, we'll try to answer them for you. Otherwise, I'd like to just thank you again for your participation here and presenting us with this proclamation. Thank you.
Mike was not in the communications crew, but he was in the engine department, and he was partially responsible for the Liberty being able to make it back to Malra under its own power, and he stayed in Malra to help fix the ship. So he has some special knowledge, and I can just tell you that Bryce and Mike will hopefully be around for a little while after this. If you have any questions, Bryce has a picture which is quite dramatic of himself right after raid, and he looks like he's covered in ash and pretty